Okay, so we're jumping in here, and this is a VOD from yesterday's Hyperion match. Um, my understanding, I've watched this once. My understanding is that the red team, especially with the Hog, gave us a bit of trouble. So I really want to focus in on how we can better deal with these challenges, and I think the core theme of this session is going to be about how do we take map control, when do we give it up, and why do we want it. I think integrating that puzzle piece into our understanding of Overwatch is going to allow us to really hone in, like when we go into a fight or like when we pick a comp, what exactly are we looking for? At different points, I'm going to ask a question to the tanks, the DPS, and the supports in chat. If you are one of those roles, just feel free to speak. I really just I'm doing this because I think that's going to be helpful as a way to like orient who the information or like who should be answering some of the questions. So anyone can answer this question, but what is the goal of our composition? What do we want to do? How do we want to play?
Oh, like a rush.
Do we?
Just getting. I mean, not as much with the soldier. We won't play
With
PUBG
Soldier,
with the
we're playing a
soldier.
little bit more of a poke comp and looking for.
Looking for.
Well, I'm thinking looking for hacks, but like we look for a hack in Rush, but like rushing is not necessarily like we have to look for a hack onto a tank, I'm guessing, and try to burn that tank down. That's probably what I'm thinking with this composition, especially as with the Moira Lucio. Uh, and I know the Soldier is a pick. Yeah.
So when we usually play this comp, we do it with the Reaper. It's a version of Six Man, and I would categorize it as a rush, where essentially if we have the right ultimates or if we can get a hack, we're gonna go in aggressively. We're gonna use like DM. We're gonna use bubble to take space, and to eliminate one or two or three targets, and then we're gonna full get out. The difference between a rush comp versus a brawl comp is going to be in how we want to use our resources to engage and disengage. Whereas like a brawl comp kind of wants to play in a corner and they're going to go forward, they're going to back out. The rush comp is going to want to full engage and then full disengage. When we do this with like a Reaper, like we're doing this in order to enable the Reaper, right? The speed boost is for the Reaper, the DM and the bubble are for the Reaper. We're trying to close the distance. Whereas now that we've brought in the soldier, uh, we can't really burst down enemy targets as easily because instead of having that frontline burst damage, we have a hit scan on the high ground. And it's not that we can't kill targets, but no longer is it the most optimal way to play this composition in order to enable that Reaper by like, yeah, full engaging here. Instead, what we kind of want to do is now we've become kind of kind of a brawl comp where we really just want to like drop our Winston bubble and like occupy the team here and like get out. And while we're doing that, like our Sombra might have off angle pressure, our soldier's gonna be like on high ground or like a different off angle where we're still trying to pick them apart, but we can't do that full engage. It's almost like our Winston is gonna have to soft engage and then get out. I think a better way to think about this composition to understand like how it can play is how we like to play this with the tracer. So when we do this with the tracer, we have the kind of potential to take all these different off angles. And because we're so mobile, we can kind of stretch out as a core and then like return in a different place. Like, it's very hard to dive anyone on our team. It's very hard to speed onto anyone on our team. I think having this defensive positioning is really good for us. And we just have to imagine that the soldier is like kind of like a tracer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Especially against something like Hog, I think we struggle with burst damage. I think the Sombra hack is very valuable to us, and using like the Lucio speed boost to enable us to kind of get out of fights is really handy. But because we don't have like Discord here, or we don't have like an anti-nade, we're really going to struggle with bursting down these targets like the Roadhog. And even to some extent, there's Pharah. So in the future, if we decide to roll with something like this, I really would like to do something like an Ana, or like something like a Zen instead of Lucio, because then we're going to have that ability to follow up on damage, maybe do a harder engage with like the Winston and the Sombra, versus just kind of like, we can't really kill anyone right now unless the soldier does like a lot of the damage, or like the D.Va is able to like isolate someone, or the Sombra unit. So I think like by switching the Reaper for a soldier, it really minimizes the different ways that we can play, and we're just kind of like chucking something out there in order to like maybe occupy the Pharah, but like again, she's got a Mercy Pocket. That's my understanding of why we end up picking soldier. Is that what the pregame comms was
Yeah,
like?
I mean, because we were having issues with the Pharah, and we
Yeah.
decided to play a lot more soldier. We did play snipers occasionally, but we mostly played the soldier.
Okay. So in this beginning part, because of what we are running, it's going to be really important for us first to control this high ground. The reason why is because this is where a soldier wants to play from, and this is a really good place for like our Winston and our D.Va to kind of ping pong around. We want to keep the enemy team in this area. We want to engage here because then we do have that access to high ground, and it's like easier for our Winston and D.Va to soft engage. At some point, we're going to have to give it up, at which point that little square in the high ground, like the kill box that we created over here, so I'll call this kill box 1, is going to turn to this, where this is going to be kill box 2, and then this is our new high ground staging area. It's really important for us to control these high grounds almost as like a home base, because we do have that ability to ping pong. We can't hard engage. We want to poke, but we have the Winston and the D.Va, meaning that we can't just like sit back like an Orisa or like a Sigma. We have to soft engage with our tanks in order to make space for our soldier and our Sombra, and also to pull resources and farm all charge. So that's like ideally how we would want to play that. But the first part of that is understanding that we have to control these high grounds, and that these, like if we don't have access to this, we can't win. If our soldier is like playing here, or like our Sombra is like kind of stuck in here, it's going to minimize the amount of value that they can get. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to play this out. If I remember correctly, this fight we kind of lose just because someone gets picked and we get rolled over.
Defense matrix activated. Routing power to forward barrier.
Can we stay up here?
With the Pharah, probably not.
Right. Why not?
Because it's kind of exposed to the Pharah's damage.
Yep.
Yeah, and she can just chip us away for free.
So this is kind of like the hole in the strategy, is that the Pharah can poke because we don't have enough like sustain or long range damage to be able to like threaten her. Like if we had a Widow like sitting back here, then the Pharah couldn't enter this space. So we really just have to like almost like bunker down, and then when like the Winston D.Va come out, then the soldier comes out like here. That's ideally how we would do it. But we lose the Sombra at entry. We start taking damage. And now we've kind of backed off. And I'm glad that we backed off. But we still don't really have a game plan. It didn't seem as though we had one like in this entire portion, because if we were having issues with Pharah, why would we set up here with like dice? You know what I mean? Like I understand if we had like an Orisa, right? The Orisa can hold this like space, but if we don't play heroes that can hold a space, then we can't like make that a part of our game plan. Tanks, do you understand what I mean by hold space?
Kind of like just occupy it.
So, I'm going to differentiate 3 terms. There's going to be hold space, take space, and give up space. Like, go with solid background. Okay. So tanks, of like the tanks in the game, who do you think is good at holding space? Who do you think is good at taking space? And who do you think is good at giving up space?
Can they overlap?
Sure, like a tank might be good at one, or like 2 or 3, like, yes.
Yeah, cause so holding space, probably the Orisa, Orisa and Ryan are probably the 2 best at holding
Why?
space. Because they have a little bit more permanent shielding, I think. That's not permanent, but like
They have
I
more sustainability.
yeah,
Like
that's what I
Orisa
was thinking.
has shift, and then Ryan just has big ass shield.
That's what I was
Yeah.
kind of thinking, something like that. Like
Yeah.
they're able to sustain a lot longer than the other tanks in the game.
So what allows them to hold space?
Their shields and their abilities.
There we go. So
Shields
shields
are-
and cooldowns
Yeah.
are 2 really big things that enable tanks to stay alive, and therefore, if you have shields or you have cooldowns that like increase your sustainability, like a Run shield or like a Fortify, that means that you're going to be able to hold space. You're going to be able to be in like an area, take damage, but not have to back off necessarily.
Right.
What about take space?
Monkey, Diva.
Monkey Diva Wrecking Ball, right? Would be those be the 3 tanks that are the best at? Or are we focusing on main tanks or off tanks as well?
All of them. I want all of them.
So Winston Diva, I think. Wait,
Why?
can stick because they're able to get they can get to space and are decent
They
at
have
hold.
movement abilities.
That's
Very
If
kind of
good.
what I was thinking. That's kind of what I was thinking. They do have abilities for holding space. Would Sigma be considered a good tank then for holding space because he is able to poke and he can get away with not get
I
away,
would
but
say
he has his
give up.
cooldown, but shields and cooldowns again.
Mm-hmm. Right, so he
Yeah.
has his shift, he can stick out his shield, right, you can kind of ping pong between the 2, and then ideally you would like to have Sigma with a partner who
Right.
can also, has one, either those shields or those cooldowns that allow you to hold space. So for this, we'll call this things you need to be able to take space, things you need to be able to hold space.
I would also say, so I guess if we're counting all tanks, we have to count him. But would Roadhog be a decent at holding space? I think
Why?
just because of his again mostly his cooldowns. Obviously, he doesn't have a shield,
Which
but
cooldowns?
specifically his healing cooldown, right? Which I
Mhm.
refer to as vape.
Yep.
And I guess whole hog technically, but that's more of an ultimate than anything. But it's just his general health pool plus the healing just allows him to hold space pretty well.
Yeah. I think there are ways that Hog is going to struggle against long range damage, but I
Right.
would categorize him in this area of being able to hold space, especially when he has
Right.
a partner that's one of these 3. And you see that because they're running the Sigma, like even though it's not like, an Orisa Diva or like a Reinhardt Sigma, you know what I mean?
Right.
They still have those cooldowns and they have a shield, so they're able to take some amount of poke. They're able to occupy and like exist in like one area, and even though they're taking poke, they don't necessarily need to back off. Obviously, there's like a limit to that. Like having
Right.
Zen Discord like really forces them to back off, but that's kind of the gist of what they're doing. What about tanks that are good at giving up space?
And again, this is kind of overlapping, I think, but I think Ride is decent.
Why?
He's able to. Well, he's able to. Just his overall health and sustainability in this situation, I think, because he's able to back up relatively safely if he keeps his shield up and he has support.
So what makes someone good at giving up space? What is it
They
that
can
we're
take it
looking
back.
for? So you're saying that giving up space is about the potential to retake?
Mm-hmm. Like the push and pull. Like they can do both.
Oh, so like Zarya.
Yeah.
Right, because she can bubble back up to give up a little bit of space in order to re-engage with a little bit more damage.
So this term is actually called
Ebb and flow.
Who else is pretty good at that?
Well, you mentioned ping ponging, so probably Diva, probably.
I would say Sigma.
I
And
would also
his
Sig
shield is
and
so
also maybe Wrecking
mobile.
Ball as well. Cause am I right with the Wrecking Ball? Because I feel like he can get in, get out pretty quickly. So he can take the space, but he also can give up the space in order to. Then he can re-engage and take the space back. So
Right.
that's also probably Winston again, as well. That's that.
So mobility is a big factor in being able to
Yeah.
give up space because you still have that potential to retake the space. Now you mentioned Reinhardt.
Also, I forgot to mention that I think Zarya probably needs to be. She can sustain in a space, but she has to take too. She takes too much poke, so I guess she's the best at taking space or giving up space. Kind of. I don't know where Zarya fits into the other. If she fits into the other two at all.
Anyone else have a thought on Zarya? Do you think Zarya is good at holding space, taking space, or giving up space?
She could
So
probably take it. Like the pressure from the high charge that she can gain just like forces them back. In a sense, in my opinion.
Or like bubbling a Doom or a Winston. They dive. They
Yeah.
can't be
I think
CC'd.
she could probably do all three, couldn't she? She can hold a space with her bubble.
Yeah, I'd say pretty okay at all three.
So I'm hearing that Zarya is good at taking space. Hold on. Zarya is good at taking space because her bubbles and her damage give her the potential to retake space. I'm sorry, she's good at
Right.
giving up space because her bubbles and damage give her the potential to retake space. What about Zarya
Right.
holding space?
I think
Not
it's a
bad, but not the best.
Explain that. How do you mean?
Like, she can. If she gets 40-40 on the bubbles, then she negated a bunch of damage and then also has a bunch of damage to put back out. So, like, you don't really have to give up any space in that sense, since you have more damage going out and not much damage coming in
I think
off of
Zarya
the initial.
is kind of like Hog here. Where
yeah.
like,
That's what I was thinking.
yeah, she's not great at holding it by herself. Or like there's a limit, there's a threshold to how much or how long she can hold a space for. But she's really good at holding space if she's synchronized with the other people around her, right? Like
Right.
her and Winston don't necessarily want to hold space together. They
Right.
can, but they're not like great at it. But if you throw Zarya with like a Reinhardt, like
Reinhardt.
a Roadhog,
Yeah.
really good at holding that space.
Right.
Okay, I think this is generally good, and obviously like it's a spectrum. Like you could say that Ryan is really good at giving up space around corners, but there's like a limitation. Like he doesn't want to be on top of like a high ground, like on like Gibraltar, for example, because he doesn't have
Yeah.
that capacity to go back onto the high ground. But especially around corners, I think Ryan is very effective at like giving up
us
a corner
space.
and then being able to push around the corner. That's my take. But the reason why I want to lay this out is because we need to understand A, what our tank line is good at, and B, what their tank line is good at. Their tank line is really good at holding space, but not really good at taking it, and they're like okay at giving it up. They want to like go into an area, sit there, poke for a while, and then go forward. That's like really the only way they can do it. they're looking for hooks, they want slow fights, but if they can't get that hook, or if they don't have like an advantage in damage, then they can't really do much. How about our Winston Diva?
In theory, it should be good at giving, taking up space as the whole ping-ponging you were talking about on the first point. So in and out, trying to... Is it like, in that situation, is just trying to disrupt them enough and getting maybe a pick or two? Or like building space for... this is building space, I'm stupid. Of course, you're building the space so your DPS can get value out of the space you've built. So us ping-ponging back and forth lets the soldier or in Sombra look for either picks or hacks to give us an advantage.
So DPS, when you have like a Winston, when do you find that the Winston is able to help you or give you resources?
Like peel, not that often, but like help take space. Like when he dives in, it sort of opens up flanks and off angles.
Right, so let's say we're sitting up here and we get poked out. And then the enemy team walks up here. As soon as they get to here, our Winston can then jump up, or our Winston Diva can then jump up and drop this bubble. So now we've thrown the bubble, it's a shield, and then the Diva might use like DM as like a cooldown, and that's going to force the enemy team to back up. This is what I mean by Winston and Diva are good at taking space. They can throw resources at like an area that the enemy team controls and force the enemy team to back off because either like the shield splits them or there's like incoming damage, but all of a sudden like the shift of like sustainability violently swings the other way. What this does for DPS is this action forces the enemy team to back off, which is going to enable our DPS to push forward or maybe take like an off angle to like pressure them. And I'm going to show you that in action on the second point. But that's how I want you guys to think about when you see the enemy team comp, what do they want to do? What are they good at? Like in the first 10, 15 seconds when we see the enemy team's comp, we should understand, okay, I want to play like here, so the enemy team pushes in, and then we push them out. Because we're good at taking space, but not necessarily holding space. So if we're able to play behind cover, then we can take it and then we can return back to cover, or like, we can do that ping pong. Are there any questions, specifically from the DPS and the support players? Because this is like, what is the role of a tank, which isn't necessarily in your ballpark.
Well, I was just the enemy team is playing double off tanks, so yeah, like as you said, like they off tanks really are not very good at taking space. So like when we're running main plus off, that means we're allowed to take space and also hold space almost maybe as well as them, but like also like using like the Winston and the Diva to dive, like it's so important for a DPS to set up and take angles to set up like crossfires to take pressure off of our Winston too when he dives into, because like if he's the only thing that's being focused when he jumps in, he's gonna die instantly, right? So like having Diva, having Sombra there, having, you know, everybody take an off angle to take pressure off the Winston so he can actually survive the engage, because he's not going in to murder everybody there. He's there to take space for the rest of you guys to push in and defend the space that he created by his one jump.
So I think you're right, but I think you're getting things mixed around a little bit. We really don't want our Winston to jump in. Especially with like, this is like damage. We don't want him to use his mobility as the way to take space. If we can. Obviously, like sometimes you're gonna have to, but ideally, he's gonna drop down and then use his mobility to get out. So I don't want us to think
We're already
of...
set on the high ground first, right? Or
It depends on the situation. Like ideally, we're sitting on the high ground and we're gonna use just gravity to bring us down, and then we'll jump back. Right? The thing that's taking the space is the bubble. The mobility is the thing that's going to either keep us alive as a Winston, or it's going to just allow us to like close a distance faster. The issue with like jumping in, especially against something like this, is that you've lost your mobility and now you can no longer give up space. And really what we need from this Winston isn't to hard engage with a jump, it's for him to soft engage and then be able to get back out alive. Because this isn't like high burst damage, this is a lot of damage over time, we're going to win out with ultimates, so we need long, slow fights.
So, wouldn't we rather play a different main tank like Reinhardt to play a little bit more static, I guess?
Do we? What's the advantage of playing Reinhardt here?
I feel like what you're trying to say is like you'd rather play a Reinhardt if you'd. I don't know, because like I feel like Winston's not very good at giving up space, right?
What do you
I
mean by
think
that? No, I want to hear him work out this problem. What do you mean by Winston isn't good at giving up space?
Because I feel like what you're telling me is that like most of the time you don't want to use his jump to engage, which is fair, right? Like if there's any chance that you don't need to use your jump, don't use it, right?
Right.
Like if you're just walking off the high ground into like a kill box or something like that, or things like that, right? But like I feel like it's not too detrimental to jump in, right? Like
It depends
because
on
how
what
are you
resources you have to be able to keep the Winston alive. So if you have something like Primal or you have something like Nano, kind of like one of those get out of jail free cards, I think jumping into engage to hard engage is really good. If you have something with a ton of burst damage that you want to synchronize with the Winston taking space, right? You want to minimize the amount of time in between when we take space and when we apply pressure, then hard engaging is really good. But with this comp specifically, we don't necessarily have any form of damage where like it's burst, where we need to apply this damage like directly on engage or else we're not going to get any value from it. Our comp is more flexible. We can get in value all while the Winston is like in and getting out. We just want to be able to sustain and take as many fights, long fights as possible. Obviously if there's like a primal or like there are other kind of ultimates that we can use to support him, like a coalescence, that changes things a little bit. Where now the Winston can take space for longer periods of time, and therefore he can use his mobility on the get-go. But I think in like a vacuum, if we think about who's good at giving up space, we say who has the potential to be able to retake space easily. I think Winston's jump makes him like a prime candidate for someone who is good at giving up space. Because that jump, that mobility, is the way that he is going to be able to give up and retake space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but like in a sense, like the thing I'm asking is like when I feel like we struggle in when we should engage and stuff like that, and I feel like there's a lot of the times where we're just sitting, or like there's a lot of times that like this is an issue I don't want to happen, is when we're just like sitting like on high ground and we don't know what to do because or like, oh, we don't want to jump in, but like how are we going to take space without like without, if we just sit there and let them poke us out, then we would just lose because Pharah would be just shooting out of the sky and stuff like that. I don't know.
So I hear you.
Yeah.
If Pharah is poking us out,
Mhm.
it's because we're trying to hold a space that doesn't have cover. Winston is not good at holding that space. If we have a set of DPS heroes that really want to hold space, like a Hanzo, for example, right? He wants to take as many shots as possible, long sight lines. He wants to have a tank who can support him by holding a space for a period of time. Winston might not necessarily be the best person to pair with him. Obviously, like, it depends, and there are ways that Winston can play around what the Hanzo is looking for. but it depends on like playstyle. I would say with these DPS, because the Sombra has the translocator, she can get in, she can get out, she's gonna be pretty good at synchronizing her ebb and flow with the Winstons. Or the soldier who doesn't have the burst damage necessarily, but wants to be able to put in like damage over time and can reposition quickly. I think those are the kinds of heroes that can take advantage of Winston's mobility. But if the soldier is playing in a way where he's just kind of like sitting on a high ground, like shooting for forever, that's not going to be good for him because the Winston can't support him in doing that. If you're going to play soldier with the Winston, you have to be mobile, you have to be like control high grounds, you have to take off angles. Because like he's legs, right? You play him for his mobility, not necessarily because you just want him to be like a turret. So the original question was, why Reinhardt? And I think what you're getting at was, if we want to give this soldier resources to be able to take out the Pharah, we need to have a tank that can more effectively hold space. And I don't think that's necessarily true, but I think if we're going to use the soldier like a turret against the Pharah, I do think that the Reinhardt would be a better play here. But again, that's not like how we want to play this comp anyway.
So like, would you say like a high mobility like fast comp wouldn't be? Because I feel like it would be good, especially like the Pharah. Like if we're playing against a Pharah, like playing quick against a Pharah is like something that we want.
Yes.
Wouldn't we not want to play static against a Pharah because she would just poke us out
Correct.
eventually?
But I think there's something different between high mobility and high tempo, and I'll get to that later.
Okay.
Before I move on, does anyone have any questions about space and tanks? Okay. So we lose this point. Now we're going to go up to this high ground. So this point is going to play very similar to the last one. We have this high ground. This is the space. We're going to make like a kill box where the enemy team is going to push in. And we're going to drop down. Wrong color. We're going to drop down. We're going to go back up. And the way that we control space and the way that we really put pressure on the enemy team is by controlling this high ground. Now, if our concern is like a Pharah in the sky, just kind of like shooting at us, we need to take action so that our soldier is more empowered to like put pressure on her. Maybe this means that like the D.Va has to use DM, or the D.Va has to like body block, and the Moira has to like heal them. Like the soldier doesn't want to be taking sustained poke, but the D.Va's kind of alright with it. The issue is like, what if our team doesn't do anything while that kind of little, call it like a 2v2 between the D.Va and the soldier against the Mercy and the Pharah? What if like the rest of the team isn't doing anything? And that's like the kind of what if with playing like Winston D.Va here. It's that we need the Winston to apply pressure to this space. Because not only is that going to stall cart, but that's going to be the thing that allows us to win out the rest of the fight, because we don't necessarily have something that can just like sit here and shoot the Pharah. We need the Winston to take and control space for just enough time for the soldier and the Sombra to get value. So we're going to see this play out. We're going to sit up here. Pharah's just kind of poking, but you see she's not getting too much value. No one's really afraid that they're going to die. So here, just like how I said, we make our kill box, we have our soldier up alone on high ground, and we're going in, we're taking this space. Did our Winston use his mobility? Yes. So our Winston used his jump, which might come back to bite us, but there's also a chance that he doesn't. He can just go out, like around a corner and then jump back up. So will this jump come back to bite us? Maybe not. Why is this jump not necessarily bad? What does the jump give him the ability to do?
Get to the kill box a little bit quicker.
And how would
The-
he want to use his jump if he hadn't already?
Get back
Figure it
out.
out.
Right? So the jump is going to be the thing that allows him to give up space to get out. But remember, these guys aren't going to be great at pushing him out. They don't have like a Reinhardt that can walk on him. They are okay at taking space, but not great at it. So if the Winston just kind of like backs around this corner, he should be able to like live for long enough to get that jump back so that he can jump out. So this is the situation because of corners, where it's not necessarily like only on our cooldowns and whether if we can like do something or not. Because we have like cover and corners, we have other options, and the way that our Winston plays is gonna be able to extend the amount of time that he can control space for. And that's the same thing with Reinhardt. Our D.Va uses her boosters as well, so we're committing to like taking this space, but we really gotta hope that they don't hard engage us. Because then we can like go around this corner, but if they keep going, we're kind of at a loss. And remember, we want long fights. We want to give resources, aka time, to our soldier and to our Sombra. This is to the DPS. What is the soldier doing here? What value is he getting?
If anything, I say it would probably just be distracting the Pharah, poking her out, making sure she can't play in the open space,
I want a different word than distract. What is he doing to the Pharah?
applying pressure.
Okay. And because of this pressure, what can't the Pharah do?
Load.
I'd say the Pharah can't really take space. So if the Pharah, for example, is up here and she tries to push forward, she's going to be out of cover. So she can't take space. So when we talk about space, I think I've been talking about it in a few different ways. I've been talking about it like space in the low ground, and then maybe like a space in the high ground. But kind of like all of this is also space. Where generally Overwatch is like a game of like two planes. You have this plane and you have this plane. There's actually like more, but not very many heroes can really play in like this space. This is gonna be like Pharah, Echo, and like that's about it. But what our soldier's doing is because he has this high ground, he's going to be able to deny the Pharah from taking this space. And that's the difference between a DPS and a tank. It's because of the size of the hero pool and the cooldowns, it's much easier for tanks to take or give up space. So that's what our soldier's doing up here. He is denying the Pharah from taking space. Because if he wasn't here, the Pharah could just like float over everyone's heads. But because he's here, she can't. I will say that like there's other things that the soldier could be doing right now. Like he could be like sitting on this edge and shooting the rest of the team, and then if the Pharah pushes forward, then maybe he returns over here. So there are ways that he can play in a way where it takes advantage of what these guys are doing while still being able to do his job that he's trying to do up here. So Winston D.Va jumps in, they back around the corner. What is this? What just happened?
I'm an idiot. I was not playing good tonight. I played too aggressive and I just kept dying because I'm stupid. So
So I want you to think about it like this. They control all this space, right? And we, because we took these actions with their bubble and because of where we've got our team, we're controlling all of this space. Now that we've used our bubble, we don't have any cooldowns, besides maybe like a little bit of DM, to really allow us to control this space for long. So if they wanted to, they could walk forward and they could change the color and take control of this space. What you're trying to do right now is you're trying to use your DM to try to take their space. And you're not going to be very effective because D.Va is not great at doing this alone.
Right. Yeah, watching back, it was like a massive mistake. This during the game I play, and then also I kind of like let Browns die because Browns. What also I think happens is Ricey calls a hack on the Roadhog and we overreact. And we go in trying. Well, the hack just faded off, but we get the hack call and we overreact trying to punish the hack, which we don't necessarily need to do.
How should we react to a hack like this? So I think the hack on the Roadhog is a good play. How should we take this into consideration of what we do?
We probably should have used it to stabilize after that, because that's their big aggression, is the hook from the hog.
Okay. Anyone else have a different opinion?
This
Go ahead.
I was thinking about possibly doing well. So it's stabilizing or we go into. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was about to say, like, if we hack one of their tanks, then we might be able to get at a squishy.
So let's say that we're trying to go after the Zen, and we are a Sombra. Who should we hack?
I know the answer. Do you want me to? I can say it.
I'd prefer the supports.
Yeah,
No. Give me the supports that DPS. Either one. Who are supports and DPS in here? Scarrow, Vincent, Blaze.
Sorry. Could you repeat that?
If we're the Sombra, and
Mhm.
we're trying to go after the Zen in this Zen Brig comp, who should we hack?
The Brig.
Why?
Take over the Zen because the Brig is the one with the CCs.
And she has the sustain heals.
So if we hack this Brig,
Mhm.
she can't pack the Zen, she can't shield bash, she can't whip shot. All of the things that she needs, not just to pocket the Zen, but also to threaten the Sombra, are no longer there. So if we hack the Brig, we can more effectively go after the Zen. Right?
Mhm.
Now I want to transpose that. If we hack the Roadhog, who can we more easily go for now?
BAP.
Who else?
BAP, Kree,
Sigma.
and Sigma. Those would be the three.
Right. So if you look at their team comp, they only have 3 forms of CC. They have the Rock, which is kind of hard for them to use. They have the Hook, and they have the Flashbang. If we hack the Roadhog, that can be a go button for us to engage under the BAP, to engage under the Sigma, to engage under the McCree. We can use like a shield to block the Rock, we can use a DM to eat the Flashbang, but really, we can be taking advantage of our Sombra's hacks as like a go button to go on like a different target. We don't necessarily have the damage to be able to chew through all like 600 HP of this Roadhog, especially if he's got like the Mercy Pocket or the BAP or whatever. But these are all a lot easier targets. What I would say is that because we don't have our Winston bubble, it's that we can't fully take advantage of this hack. And I would say that this hack from Ricey is either a little bit too early, because we're still waiting on this bubble cooldown, or it's too late. Now, this is a good hack because now Ricey is going to be able to farm ult charge. But if we want to take an action off of this, if we want to say, okay, we're going to engage and try to take space off of the hack, and that's going to be one of our triggers, then we need to have this communication between our Winston and our Sombra player. Where Brown's fan is going to say, okay, Ricey, see if you can get a hack on the Roadhog. I have bubble in 3. I can go in and engage on the Sigma when you hack Roadhog. That would be the calm from like the main tank of the Sombra. And you can say that the other way around. The Sombra can say, Browns fan, let me know when you have your bubble and your jump. I'm looking for a hack on the Roadhog, and you can engage off of it. So that's the kind of communication that I'm looking for, not just like in this comp in this one situation, but like anytime we run our 6-man, this is how our Winston and our Sombra play together. Not necessarily we both shoot at the same target, but this is how we're going to allocate our cooldowns in order to take space, or in order to like pressure someone specific. But because we're desync, we're not really able to do that, and our Winston's going to get punished. So you see, even though we lost our Winston, they're still like kind of struggling to take this space. It takes them a little bit. They can't just like run at us. They even have to throw Valk at it. That's just the nature of Sigma Hog. Deepen our Lucio feed, and now we're just trying to reset. So this is the kind of snowball effect of a lot of second point escort and hybrid maps, is because they win this fight, they're now going to be able to take this high ground, and then like all of this space. We're not really worried about most of it, but I think the ones that are really significant to us are this high ground, because the McCree is going to be able to play on it, and then like here, the doors. Because what we're going to have to do is, just to get out of our own spawn, to get out of our choke, we're going to have to throw resources like the bubble to take this space. We have to first take this space before we can then take this space. Or we have to take like this space before we can then take this space with the McCreas. So it's kind of a two-step process. And that's why whenever I talk to you guys about like game planning, I always say use one ult for space and use one ult for kill. We might need to use the coalescence in order to get our tanks and get our backline out of this choke, and then we might use the visor or the EMP to be able to keep going and eliminate enemies. You can think of this as like a trade, where we're trading one ult for maybe one ult from the enemy team, or we might be trading one ult for the enemy team's space. We might be trading one ult for time. Because that's really what Overwatch is. It's a game of managing resources, space, and time. And every action we do should be, okay, I'm going to use this cooldown so we can get space, because we need space in order for our soldier to be effective. Or I'm going to use this ultimate so that we can kind of live for longer and maybe regroup our resources. I'm going to trade this ultimate for time. That's all this game is. It is a game of trading resources, space, and time for each other. So here we're going to push out. We use our Winston bubble, a cooldown, a resource. And now we're trading 3 ultimates to try to win the fight. What we're getting from that is we're going to get this space. We're taking away resources from the enemy team. And ideally, we're going to be able to get through. We're going to minimize the amount of time they have available to them with this visor. And then also we're going to use speed boost to like take away the time as well. What's the issue with this?
We use too much.
What does that mean?
So Now this is gonna get a little in depth, but I believe the plan was just the EMP and then coalesce our way out. But we used 2 of our space getting ultimates, which is Visor plus Coalescence on top of the EMP, and that's
Is
all 3.
Visor a space getting ultimate?
No, it's supposed to be a killing ultimate.
Yeah, it improves the lethality of the off angles.
Yeah,
I would like. I think Soldier is decent when he uses Visor at pressuring someone out of a space, but he can't really like take it off of that. So I don't want to frame it as like a space getting or space taking ultimate. I genuinely don't mind that we use 3 ultimates, but this is kind of
Yep.
an issue.
we didn't push the high ground. We just pushed straight onto them.
I don't know if we took this into consideration, and I don't know if you're looking here. I do know that Raisu's looking here. So when we take these actions, we always need to understand who has control of the high ground. Does Scarrow need the high ground?
Yes.
Does he?
Me?
I'm
mean, if I get
generally
behind their supports, they don't really have anything that can chase me down.
Do you need the high ground?
No.
Right. But the McCree really wants it. So sometimes we need to take control of high ground, not necessarily because we want it, we just don't want the enemy team to have it. So that might be like a good example of like, we would have the Winston jump up, force the McCree back, and then we'd give up this space again, because they don't have the mobility to be able to retake this high ground position. So all we're trying to do is take it away from them, and then give it back up. I think something that we could have done is dealt with this McCree first, because it just like takes out a threat.
Apagando las luces.
Because now that we don't have Scarrow anymore, we really lose a lot of our damage. And if we don't have that damage, it's going to make it harder for us to win fights when we're leading. You know, we still like win it out, but it's a lot more uncertain than it needs to be. Like if they just throw like one more ult into it, we probably lose that. I don't think using 3 ultimates there is bad, because now if you look at this, because we retook tempo, not in the fight, but like in the game, now we have all this high ground, and it's like going to make it really hard this far out now. It's really important for us to win that fight there.
think I think this is the fight where I make the decision to go back to spawn and switch in order to get my mech back.
Okay, I think that's fine.
Because that's something like in the moment I made the decision, but in my head I was like, was that really the best decision? Because we kind of sacrificed a little bit, and the spawn disadvantage isn't as bad.
Okay, backtracking before that,
Yeah.
I think this is really important for us to win this fight. I think controlling this high ground, even just to deny the enemy McCree and like to some extent the Pharah, is really important. We don't have to like overthink. We can give up this space. We just don't want like the enemy McCree to get like here. And we want to like, if we can, have Scarrow up here to try to pressure and deny the Pharah. So even if like you are walking back to spawn, all you have to do is communicate that to the team so that we don't try to like hold a space or take a space, assuming that we have the D.Va, but we actually don't.
Justice reigns from above.
So they throw resources, they throw ults to try to take the space back. Ground Span makes a really good play, and we kill the Sigma off of it. Capo burns his Fade, so he can no longer escape. Wait. Die up here.
Yeah, barraged.
Okay. Blaze here. Blaze is here. So you used Amp here, right? Blaze? I don't know if Blaze is here, but for future watchers.
He's muted.
When we
He might be
think-
AFK. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking he's AFK. For future watchers, when we think of cooldowns, like I keep saying, like we use bubble to take space, or we're gonna use like a hack in order to, take time or resources from the enemy team. When we burn cooldowns, whether it's like a fade or whether it's like an amp, we ideally want to trade that for like some amount of time or like space for us or take it away from like the enemy team. When we just like use it when we don't have to, so like he used a heal amp here, not really for anything. It means that we no longer have that available. So when this Pharah makes an aggressive action to like barrage, having like a speed boost that like, we can run away from that would be really helpful. Or when Cabo uses his fade down here, and then the McCree just kind of drops and bursts him, having that fade would be really helpful. So just like when D.Va wastes DM, or like
Rains from above.
Monkey wastes bubble, supports or like DPS burning cooldowns can have a similarly like bad effect. I think generally it's like worse if like the tanks do, just because they're bigger and more exposable targets. So just something to take into consideration. So now we're just throwing ultimate to like beat and primal. Try to trade out. We actually do a pretty good job. Brownstone makes a really good play. And then Scarrow comes off a respawn, and they're not able to finish up kills. Just like how we want to give Scarrow time, they also really want to give this Pharah time. And the Pharah really isn't playing it all that well. I thought you guys played this point really well, actually. Because once we like take control of this, we burn so much time off the clock. I thought this was the best sequence of the map.
Time to raise my APM. Helden sterben nicht.
So now they all go high ground. We give it up. Floater gets lucky. What now? This is a question for everyone. What now? So they have control high ground. We have given up that high ground without using any of our cooldowns, which is great. They have popped Valkyrie. What do we want to do?
I was muted. We want to re-engage that high ground
Do we?
because we have all of our we have all of our cooldowns, and then we have 2 ultimates.
But we're
That
also
is-
defending, and the point's almost taken. It'd be suicide to go up there and fight if we lose.
Why?
Because like if we lose, they just cap point. It's
So-
better to just play under them and have them come to us.
Why? Give me more. Why is taking a fight up here worse than taking a fight down here?
Well, I mean, at least for our ultimates,
I mean,
Visor,
like
you need LOS, and like they can just duck behind cover if we
half
pop
pe- half
Visor
of
on the
the-
high ground.
half of our team can't get up there
There
effectively.
we go.
Yeah.
So it's not that the payload position means that we can't take the fight up here. It's that we don't effectively have the heroes or the resources to take a fight up here that like we can win. Because they have this control high ground, and we have heroes like, Lucio, Moira, Soldier, who don't have that verticality, that mobility. This isn't going to be like a fair 6v6. This is going to be like Browns fan, Florida, and Ricey trying to take like a 3v4 into Valk. I don't want you to think of like this payload as a major concern. If I'm being honest, it has a ton of distance to go. We have a ton of time. And remember, we want to give up and retake space. So we can actually just like leave this area. I think Browns fan is in a really awkward position because he can't get away. If we were playing like inside here, they can't poke us. We're playing underneath them. It does not matter if they have high ground control. They're going to try to push this, and that's going to be when we can apply pressure.
Could we also attempt like soft engaging the high ground to try and push them off, and that doesn't work, then we can shelter?
If we soft
In?
engage the high ground, can we push them off?
No.
Why?
I mean, Well, at the moment, there's currently a Valk happening, and they also have a Baptiste and
And they can just kind of back off.
Barrage. Yeah.
This far is just gonna like torture tanks. So do you remember when we did that little activity where with like the Sombra would go for the Zen or the Brig, or the Sombra would go for like the Hog, and that would enable us to kill like the Sigma?
Yeah.
Do you see anything similar here?
Hack. Well, I mean, the only one at first, the first one standing out to me is Hack the Mercy that killed the Pharah, but that's when she's not in Valk. Hacking the Hog to kill the Sigma, or
Who
the
would
other
you
way.
say is the most isolated on the enemy team right now?
At the
Hog.
moment, Hog by a long shot.
What is preventing us from killing this Hog?
His
To sustain his abilities in his teammates.
well, there's also a Valk and Bap.
Can they see him?
No, they can't. So
Not with unexposed
so
themselves.
it's just the Hog at the moment by himself, and if we were to hack him,
So let's say our D.Va flew at the Hog. What might the enemy team do?
they might peel.
Drop.
They might drop the peel, and then we could EMP them.
They could. What might be something that we can do to prevent them from dropping?
Hack.
Pressure the low ground. Or like
Well, we could.
We could use Visor.
That's what I was thinking. Like we could use Visor to build some space,
That's not a bad one.
or hmm.
So we have this bubble, which is really good at denying the enemy for a little bit of time.
Oh, we dropped the bubble onto the high ground to stop
Mhm.
them.
So what
We
we can
dropped-
do here is we can soft engage like you were saying, drop this bubble, maybe even drop Visor, and go for the Hog. If we can get a hack on this Hog, even better. Just like how I was saying the Sombra hacks one target so we can go for the other, that's just hack is just like a resource. We can drop bubble against like the rest of the team and use that to go after this Roadhog.
Okay.
They care about controlling the space because it gives them sightlines. We can just drop the bubble. It's going to give us like 3 seconds, but that's all we need. All we need is 3 seconds for us to engage in this Hog. We've got speed boost, we've got jumps, we've got boosters, we've got micro missiles, we've even got a visor. This is totally doable. But like what this requires us to do is understand, okay, we need to soft engage so that we can do something else. The soft engage is the thing buying us the space. So what I need here is for Ricey or for Scarrow or anyone else in the team that like recognizes something like this to say, Brownsfan, can you soft engage here so we can go for the Hog? And that's the same thing as if like this could be any target. It just so happens that the Hog is the most isolated. Does anyone have any questions or not understand that? Okay. And as you said, we do have the coal and we do have the EMP. So if they do drop, we can EMP. But we need them to drop before we can really do that. If we need the coal to sustain, it's perfectly fine. I'm alright with using 3 ultimates in order to win a fight. Especially here. Because if we use 3, that's going to force out 1 or 2 from the enemy team. It's just a question of, are we using these ultimates in a way that's going to win us the fight? Right now we're kind of turtling. And that's fine, but it needs to be with a purpose. They just dropped something.
Apagando las luces.
I don't know why they dropped. But it played out well. We used 3 ultimates. We lost our D.Va on entry. That's perfectly fine. Not that losing the D.Va on entry, that's kind of awkward. But using the 3 ultimates is perfectly fine. Again, they didn't need to drop. I'm not really sure why they did, but I like the recognition for when they drop that we EMP. Control the high ground. They've now had to switch comp because the FAR is not getting any value because we're controlling the high ground for Scarrow well enough. They're trying to push high ground again. That is a dangerous jump. I think you expected to get Primal with that jump and you came up a little bit short. It's good Primal. What goes wrong here?
I drop.
Give me something more. What happens? What's the trade?
We use our jump resource and we get 2 ultimates currently.
What do you mean get 2 ultimates? Like the enemy team uses 2?
Yeah.
And they are committing this whole hog as well. So they use 3 ults.
And we just use
What are they trading these 3 ults for?
the space.
What else? What else do they get out of this?
Primal.
Primal. Fade. I think we use like an amp.
Most of my DM.
Space. DM. And like, that's pretty fine by us. 3 ults is a lot. The issue is when it translates to kills for us. Do we need this space?
No.
Because
We
remember,
could have just dropped
Mhm.
and hid.
like we didn't need to take this fight here, especially if we were ult tracking and understood like they had a bunch of ults. We can give up this space. If they want to burn like High Noon from low ground or Ant Matrix up top, that's perfectly fine. They're using these ultimates for space. If they get more cooldowns out of it, that's perfectly fine. But we don't want to trade our lives for like ults. If we can live through ultimates, that's fantastic for us. And remember, our comp is good at giving up space so that we can then retake it. We don't need to hard engage like this. We don't need to fight for this space with like, if we don't, we're not fighting for this space with our lives. That's not the thing we want to do. We just want to like back off, give them the space. They still have so long with this payload. We're in no rush. Because now we weren't able to like win the fight off of the hard engage from our tanks. And so now we've like lost. And now we're just like chucking ultimates to try to like trade out like the kill. But we really need that for the retake. So like if we got up here, right, so they pop the amp window.
In that. Yeah.
If we get up here and like Brown fans like, oh, they popped a window, I got out what I was looking for, Primals to live and then gets out, it's perfectly fine. So we traded Primal out. That's alright, we'll take another fight. Gratisfan does a really good job of living through all this. Race is just farming AMP. Perfectly fine, we've lost this point, it is all good. This is a really good time bank for us. We can totally full hold in this. Like, we can probably stop the payload here, and that's like very doable.
Time to raise my APM. I'm gonna have to shoot you down.
I haven't heard from any of the people not on Nova. Ty, I believe these are players with you. Do any of you have any questions for me? Any of the language that I've used? Any concepts? Any questions in general? I'm gonna take that as a
I believe I'm the only one left.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
Ty is good.
Defense matrix activated.
Like we're pretty happy with this. Like I don't know how Rook was feeling in the match,
Get through this.
but I would be feeling pretty good right now.
I was feeling pretty good after this because we get kind of brutalized the map before, and so like seeing all this, seeing our actual starting to get hold, talk about all combos, it fell apart in the offense, but our defense was very good.
Tell me about the Reinhardt.
My call.
No, no, no. I don't mean like that. What does the Reinhardt do for us? Why did we swap the Winston for a Reinhardt, and what advantage or disadvantage might this give us now? Rook, you can answer this as well if you'd like.
I just said, look, very little high ground. We're probably playing into hog. I just want to play corners and run at people.
Mm-hmm.
I also called for a Reaper swap, but Scarrow was close visor, so he's just like, I keep it. I'm like, that's fair.
Does anyone want to add on to that?
So we just established we kind of want to take a corner and try to hold that corner a little bit better, and then also this allows us to brawl a little bit more easier
Mm-hmm.
because with the sustainability that Reinhardt has compared to Winston, like, obviously with the larger health pool, and the larger amount of shields, we should be able to get into a fight and actually like we can now physically like get into their team comp and brawl
Do we
as
want to brawl?
opposed. No,
Not really.
I keep thinking of Reaper. My
Like,
bad.
we'll get to the Reaper,
yeah.
but as of now, we don't really want to brawl. We're really just waiting for this EMP, and we'll have Coalescence as well.
Yeah.
Reinhardt, I think, is really good because it is these narrow corridors. He is going to be pretty good at like stopping the hook, as well as now that they've got Reaper, denying the Reaper compared to a Winston. I do like this swap a lot. How do we want to use our speed amp? Because generally you play Lucio to enable maybe like Reinhardt or like Reaper to hard engage. We don't have a Reaper, and we're not really looking to brawl. How do we want to use our speed boost?
We can use it to take position to set up for the EMP.
We can. What would that
Use
position
it
be?
Well, what we did was rotate all the way to the right. Instead, we could have just set up to the main, or wait for EMP to set up, then jump in with speed boost.
So
could we also
Go ahead.
could we also use it to back when they speed in?
So that's what
Yeah.
I was thinking of. So
Disengagement tool.
we want to set up to take an engage somewhere. Where do you think that would be? I'll give you a few options. Call this 1, 2, 3. Where do we want to take the fight?
Well, we're 2 at the moment.
I'd say 3 because it's the most open space, and that's where our comp is a little better than theirs.
What are we waiting for as a team?
Cole and EMP.
Right. So it really doesn't matter which one we take these at. All we're looking to do is engage when we're set up for any one of these spots when we have EMP. So I think you're right. Speed boost is going to be really good for us to get us into a position where we're ready to like engage with Ricey, either on 2 or on 3. Right now we do this flank. I don't know if we necessarily need to do that. So what we could do is we could have our Ryan just like set up on this corner, because Ryan really likes corners. And then if the enemy team swings out and we're not ready yet, we can't EMP because we don't have the ult, we can just back out. I think speeding to take her, like rotating to do this is perfectly fine. But like remember, Ryan wants to play corners. And EMP is just like our win button. We don't even need the soldier to do very much if we're like relying on EMP and Cole. I think we don't really know what we're looking for. I think we make this rotation expecting that we want to engage here, but we're not really watching the payload and it just kind of walks right by us.
Yeah, I think we were thinking about doing a beat engage, and I thought the beat was supposed to come out by now, and I think we just rotated because we were waiting. I don't know what we were waiting for.
What do we need this beat for?
Flux.
Right. And this happened several times, I believe, where we used beat directly before the enemy team flux. The first thing that needs to happen, especially as like a Lucio or a Zen player, is we need to understand like what are we saving our ultimates for? And if we have something that's going to be very valuable for us, right? So if they're going to trade, they're going to try to trade a flux for like a fight win. Having like something that we can trade back instead, like a beat, is really important. What else could we use on our team to prevent this flux from translating into a fight win? I don't mean like just if we had all 6 ultimates, what could we use to prevent the flux from turning into a fight win?
EMP.
EMP? What else?
Bomb.
If you squint hard enough, visor.
If you squint hard enough. I think we can get some kind of value out of using Diva Bomb or Visor or Coalescence while we get fluxed. It kinda
Obviously, beat
depends
is
on
the
like
best counter, but
yeah, that kind of depends on like what the other team wants to throw at it, right? Because if we use like let's say we use Coalescence when they fluxed, and we're like okay, we're keeping the people alive like who are in the air, but then they use like High Noon. Okay, well now what? Now the Moira has to cut LOS, and either the Moira is going to die from the High Noon, or the people in the air are going to die from the High Noon. So the great like in between, the one that's going to be most flexible and most able to just respond to the flux, is going to be that beat. We can also say we're just going to play around EMP and we're just going to EMP every flux. I think that's another valuable strategy. When I play Sombra, anytime they have a Sigma, I am camping that Sigma when they have flux because I just want to manual hack it. And if I can't get the manual hack, I'll go for an EMP if we don't have like something like beat or trance. So we just need to understand like when we go into a map or when we go into a fight, what do we need to trade or what do we need to save ults for? We use like this beat for, I don't even know if we needed to use it for space. I think we just kind of use it with speed amp because. And like the Reaper ult thing kind of gives us more value than we really deserve. But now we don't have anything for the flux. Okay. Zoom, zoom, zoom. What's going on here?
Hawk all by himself.
And they've got control high ground, right?
Right.
So we can choose to either go onto this hog, which I think we can try, but I think unless we get a nade on the hog, we're not going to be able to kill him still. So instead, we really just want to take this high ground. Which we can do, especially because this hog is split. So whereas before it was like, oh, they're on high ground, that really exposes the hog, especially if we use our hack. Now it's kind of like, oh, the hog is split. This really exposes the rest of the team, and they're going to have to drop off high ground. If they don't drop off, we're going to get a kill out of this. So I do think going for the high ground here is going to be the best option. They have a lot of things that like to deny Tracer. Things that are annoying. Their healers suck. This is like one of my least favorite healer compositions because they can't really peel for each other. Like a Doomfist wrecks this backline. But obviously like these two would, the rest of the team gives the Doomfist problems. This is why I said Scarrow that I think you should go Hanzo. You go Hanzo, this guy can't get value. It's going to be easier for us to burst down the hog because we're going to have Storm Arrow. It's going to give us more long range poke. And like they've got a Sigma shield, but like the rest of them don't want to stay up here if like the Hanzo's just firing shots. And it gives you a ranged advantage over this McCree. So I think once we come out here and we recognize, oh, they've got Torb McCree, we should go Hanzo. We don't need to force Tracer. We don't need to force like. Even we don't even need to force Echo. If the McCree is giving us too many problems, this is a good jump for Brown's Fan. So we force him up high ground. But we don't take it. Why do we want high ground? I know why we don't want the enemy team to have high ground. Why do we want high ground?
Makes a
So-
good staging point for the dives.
Not
who?
Monkey specifically, so the monkey does not have to waste his jump cooldown every time, and also can help me build up ult charge.
Who else wants high ground?
Ana, Brig.
Ana, not the Brig necessarily, but the
Brig
Ana.
goes with the Ana.
Brig goes with the Ana, yeah.
How about these two?
Well, Tracer, Echo
Isn't
what?
necessary.
I don't know if
This
it's. I mean, like
always
it'd
good
be
to have.
nice. It's a nice to have for the Echo, because then she can get to the high space a lot quicker.
So usually Echo has to use a cooldown to get above the enemy team.
Right, but now she can just sit there.
Well, she can still use that cooldown, but she can go like deeper and then still return. The same thing with like the Tracer, right? So if we set up our Tracer here, our Tracer can like blink, blink. Maybe she's like shooting someone in the back line, and then when she recalls, she's back with her team. As opposed to like, you know, trying to ration her blinks and her cooldowns and trying to run away and pick up packs along the way. If she can return to our Brig, that's fantastic for us. So I think this high ground is really important. It seems like we have no intention of taking it. Because we are so far away. What we need to do is really make this rotation. And the time to do that is going to be on the monkey engage. So if I go back here, the monkey literally has everyone's attention. And so we need to do this. The one thing I am concerned about is this hog. But like, we can kind of whip shot him, we can sleep him, we can nade him, we can pressure him out. But like, that's the only thing I would say to watch out for. Florida, what you need to be doing in this rotation is just like watching for the hook and use your bubble to block it. Not your friendly bubble, like your personal bubble.
Roger.
But like, this is a fantastic jump, really great bubble. This is everything we're looking for. But we're like nowhere in position to be able to take advantage of it. Like, this feels like Browns fan go do something. And that's not going to be how we're effective. We don't want him to hard engage. We want him to soft engage, which he does, you know, perfectly. But like, we need to rotate off of that. Because now he's out of resources, and now we're trying to rotate. Cabo, you need to be further up so that you can punish the Roadhog. You are the team's biggest counter to the Roadhog, with both your sleep dart and your game. I don't mind these bubbles. Zarya,
I do. I remember. Sorry, I don't mean
No,
to
go ahead.
interrupt, but
Go
I
ahead.
remember telling Browns, "Hey, let's walk," and then I expected him to jump back out. Honestly, just so I could build up a little bit of energy. But I do think he decides the hard engage, if I remember correctly.
So did you communicate with him that you wanted him to just take poker to soft engage?
I might not have told him to disengage, but I told him, hey, let's just walk, build up energy, and I didn't. I probably needed to specify in that moment, hey, don't fully engage into this comp. I need you to just back up, because right now I'm just trying to build up some energy, and then also you can take some pokes so Cabo can
Yeah, a shorter way to say that is I'm just bubbling you for energy.
bubbling for energy.
And this is the, especially with like a Zarya, I love these. Because we don't need to engage. And this is with a Reinhardt, this is with a Winston, this is with a Wrecking Ball. You're trying to build up resources so that you can engage better with more damage on your Zarya. We're not in a rush to take this fight. Like, at all. They can't really push us. They can't really push us out very far, or very easily. So if you just say I'm bubbling for energy, this is fantastic. I'm not sure why you jump in here. I think it's because there's a miscommunication where you think that Florida is giving you this bubble so that you can engage, you don't have to. If someone gives you a resource, whether it's like a nano or it's like a bubble, and they're just like do something, and you don't think you're in a position where you can effectively do something with it, don't. You're good. They wasted the cooldown, not you. I don't know why we pull back out here. Again, we need to rotate onto this high ground. Even if we lose one, they can't really stop us from making this rotation. One of the things I do want you to do, Cabo, is I want to sync your cooldowns with the engage. Right, so you throw... Where?
The nade already hit.
Yeah, where's this nade?
About
There's the stickies as well. So this is for Ricey and for Cabo. You throw nade and stickies just as like general damage in the pre-fight. You could have thrown them when we engage with the bubble. So maybe that gets a heal amp onto Brown's fan, or maybe that gets an anti on the McCree, so then Brown's fan might be able to find a kill when he takes a soft engage. Same thing with like the sticky bombs. So when Brown's fan engages, he's going to drop this bubble. Ricey should be coming up behind him using sticky bombs, using focusing beam, especially when we have nano. This should be a hard engage onto the high ground. We should be able to get 1 or 2 kills out of this. But because like we waste resources and just completely have them out of sync, we're able to take this high ground, but like we really need to get more out of this action. It's like a big opportunity. We're not in a rush.
yeah.
But total
I
opportunity.
yeah, I remember this was a miscommunication because I told Brown to jump because I thought I didn't communicate that, hey, Browns, go jump while Cabo nanos you. We didn't fully communicate. I just said, hey, Brown, let's go up. Let's engage. And I thought Cabo would have nanoed him, and I did not specifically state for Cabo to nano him. So that was partially on me.
This seems like
There-
two things are happening. This seems like, one, Brown's fan is given the nano and he seems a bit frustrated because we're not really doing anything, and he's trying to like trade out a kill or two while he has the nano. And two, it seems like he thinks he's gonna be able to build up to primal and use that as his get out of jail free card. And he thinks the team's gonna be able to follow up with him if he like does this. We need to understand as like a backline that like when our Winston goes forward, we gotta follow. Maybe not necessarily follow him, but if he's up here and he takes all this space and he forces all of them off, that's like our green light to rotate. Either this way or to push in this way so that like when he drops, we're together. Because what's happening here is like Scarrow is on a journey and we're just kind of chucking resources at Brown's fan and saying do something. We are 2 minutes in. We've only used nano to take space. And almost no one from our team has cross-checked. Like what should be happening, and this is my flowchart. Brown's fan jumps up. He gets the bubble from the Zarya. Our Echo follows, uses like her stickies, and then her focusing beam. We take control high ground. Our Brig, Ana, and Zarya walk up. And either a Tracer follows or a Tracer continues this flank. So then when we get our Winston bubble back, the Winston, Tracer, and the Echo are going to be able to put pressure here. Maybe we get like a nade, and then we'll have like a Zarya there as well. Like that's what should be happening, but instead what's happening is like, 1, stickies. 2, nade. Then we wait a few seconds. And then we jump with bubble. And then 4 is don't rotate. Like this is so out of sync and it just gives the enemy team time to regroup resources. And we can spend more time in this composition. I know we haven't. But like the Lucio speed enables us to take more actions together. We need to be doing that even when we don't have like a Lucio. It was just like pressing buttons at the same time. I think people are feeling frustrated right now and like they need to make a solo play for something. You don't. We just need to do stuff together.
Adaptive circuits engaged. Roadhog. I'm going whole hog.
Pretty good. We don't get much value off of the grab, but I
Adaptive circuits
really like after that. So Brand's fan kicks him off high ground, and then Ricey uses copy, and then we rotate in. Like that's what should be happening.
Roadhog.
And like we end up throwing 5 ultimates at this, 6 ultimates. We use every single ultimate. We probably only needed like 3. And I think that speaks to the frustration that like we were feeling.
60 seconds remaining.
Definitely.
Yeah, we were frustrated at this point.
Going free. Objective lost.
So what's gonna happen here?
Stop the payload.
They play the kill box, yeah.
The reason why they're playing high ground is because they want to close the distance. They want to force us into a brawl. That's why they have the brig. And so having the high ground is going to allow them to quickly engage on top of us. They don't have something like speed boost that's going to enable them to close distance horizontally. So instead, they're going to use gravity so that they can close distance
Огонь
vertically.
по готовности. وريهم قوتك.
I don't think we needed the nano there. That was a good grab. I don't know why they're torque fed either. Now because we won that fight, we have control high ground. And we use bubble, we walk forward, we get Ant Matrix out, we can just get out here.
60 seconds remaining.
If they use something that runs out like the Ant Matrix, we just back off. That's really what I want to see and hear more from you guys. Calls to back off. Calls to back off and like rotations in from our backline. I think if we can figure out when and how we do those two things, we're going to be really successful. Now they have high ground. We take the other high ground. We're going to use one ult to kick them off. Big anti. Not able to take advantage. We use one to come up high ground, and then use 2 ults to kill, forcing them to use ults as well. It's like a little disjointed, but I think conceptually, we're throwing the right resources into it. We just need to do it together. Like Scarra and Ricey put themselves in really good positions. Browns fan did a good job of kicking them off high ground. It just kind of like took too long. I don't think we needed that grab. It's gonna come back to bite us. scrappy, but we end up winning. Now we get to this part of the map. We just get ult wipe.
No, we all swapped for stall, then swapped back to what we were running originally.
Lose Cabo and entry.
60 seconds
Turtling. It's fine. We just need to hard engage here. We should swap to Lucio.
Adaptive circuits engaged. Reaper.
Fancy copy Reaper, that's a really good choice.
30 seconds.
I think I'd like for you guys to do here. Playing way too far away. Rotate into your team. Even if like you're still trying to mark the tracer.
30 seconds.
Drop it. Play some. Nice pulse bomb. Same thing there. We use our copy. We don't sync it. Right, so we're using our copy alone as opposed to hard pushing with both copy and Reinhardt and D.Va. And so we end up like just using copy for like a little bit of space. And really, it's such a big ultimate, we get way more. A good nade forces the lamp. Because remember, now that we're playing like this Reinhardt comp, we really don't want to take these long fights. The enemy team has way better focus. Because Reinhardt can't effectively give up the space necessary for us to take harder engages. Any thoughts, questions? We have 20 minutes. Anything we want to do? Do we want to go over our composition quickly? Do we want to practice maybe in like a custom game? Like, how do we engage together? If I don't hear anything from any of the players, I'm going to leave it up to Rook.
I give my vote to Rook.
I kind of give my vote to Rogue as well.
And the answer is trust Rick. Great. My favorite. Yeah,
One that
I
least
want.
work.
I definitely think there are defaults that we should learn with 6-man. So like, yeah, engaging on the correct targets, rotations. What you were just saying about that, I want to put everybody into that.
That's more so like, I think we'd do better with
For
6-man.
tribute. Yeah.
Actually, I've been developing this. It's not
The sheet.
Ooh.
It's not done yet. I don't know if I've shown you this, by the way.
I believe you DM'd it to me.
I think I've seen this when we were doing a VOD.
Yes.
Yeah, I've
we
seen
talked
this.
about this.
Actually, this. You know, I think you've DM'd me this.
Yeah.
So you've seen this?
Yes.
Okay. This is the next phase of it. So it is... Like, what do we want to use and how do we want to use different things when we're playing 6-man? So, like, ideally... Hold on, I need to turn off this music. Get out of here. So, like, ideally... You can just imagine this is like a Sombra or like a Tracer, whatever. If we're taking space, we ideally don't want to be walking forward and using things like Speed Amp or Winston Bubble. We first want to do is use DM. So how this is going to work is that, just keep it on this one. This sheet, which I'm developing and I have part of it done, gives everyone's individual responsibilities and like what resources they should be using when we're playing 6-man. So when we walk forward, the D.Va is going to use DM. And then when the D.Va runs out of DM, she's going to say to the Winston, no DM. And he's going to drop down the bubble. So that's the communication that I want you Browns fan in Florida to ideally like play out in comp games. It's you just saying to each other, no DM, and that's going to translate to information from Brian's fan of either get out or drop bubble. We want Lucio
Roger.
to stay on speed here in this action of when we're taking space. We don't want him to use amp. The amp is going to be used for when we want to full engage or we want to full disengage. Right now we're not doing any of those, we're just setting up. We want the Reaper to play as close as possible to the Winston. And then in this situation it's the Echo, but this could easily be like a Sombra. So now
I
here's
think having like some echo in there is something that we might want to consider. Like, you know, Ricey's echo is same. It's very good.
Okay, we can try that out.
Something that we consider. We can all like we could say Xeno, like put Xeno on echo, for example. If Ricey, if we're gonna play like, you know.
Bro, my echo
Put
isn't even that
individual-
trash.
Put what I'm playing you on Reaper Scare. Your Reaper is good. I'm
No.
talking about individual heroes, like, you know, within 6 men.
I need to see more of I need to see more of Xeno's Echo. I've seen some of it. I need to work with
It's not good.
Yeah, exactly. That's I'm willing to do whatever here. Like we can run anything.
So here's like this is staging for a fight. Just imagine if there's like no team, and then here's like a situation where the enemy team is running the comp that we just played. Where the Winston's gonna go forward, the Reaper's gonna put pressure on the enemy front line. But it's not just going to be the Reaper. If you read these little bubbles, everyone's job is going to be pressuring the enemy front line while our Winston walks forward with DM. You see D.Va DMs, communicates no DM to Winston. If there are flankers, like this Tracer for example, it's going to be the Lucio's job to mark that hero. Now what does that mean? Lucio's not going to chase down the Tracer and force her out. He's just going to make it really annoying for her to play in like this little mid-distance area. So that she's going to have to burn blinks, maybe she has to burn recall, maybe she takes packs from the brig. All the Lucio's trying to do is prevent her from going into our team. No DM, Winston's going to drop bubble. If we have like a Sombra, we have an Echo, they're going to push alongside the Winston as well. They want to take a wider angle because then they're going to be able to take a slightly different point of pressure compared to like our Winston Reaper. It's really important here, if we can, for a Moira to save Orb. It's really important for a Moira to save Fade. The reason being is we want to use our Orb at the point of contact. If we can wait for our engage until we have the heal Orb, that's great. Obviously, if it's like forced, and like we're taking so much poke that we need to use heal Orb, that's fine, and maybe we still have the resources to take the engage that we want. But just like something to think about. I really want you to ration that orb if you can. And if you use it, tell the team so we know that we don't have it anymore. So in this situation, we walk forward. This is building off the prior one, where we walked forward, we pushed around this corner. Here, because we're trying to isolate a Winston, for example, this could easily be a Roadhog or whatever, our Winston walks past. Ideally, he doesn't... Actually, he does jump here. I have him jumping. This is my little jump symbol. Why do I say that the Winston can jump here? It's purely because we have this Lucio speed boost. And that's the mobility tool that we're going to use for when we want to full disengage. So what we can either do is speed in and then Winston jump out, or we can Winston jump in while we stay on speed, and then we speed out. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you repeat that last?
So
I'm so sorry.
We have Winston. We have D.Va. We have Reaper. We'll call this like Sombra. Lucio. Moira. One of the reasons why this is a good comp is because everyone has mobility. What cooldowns do each of these players have for mobility? Just shout them out.
Wraith, TP,
Wraith,
Fade, Speed Boost, Speed Amp,
jump
Diva
jet,
Booster.
the boosters, yeah. And then translocate, mobility, even though you don't really
Invis.
We'll call
invis.
it TP because you can't invis your way out of a fight, really. We'll call this boosters.
If you squint hard enough.
Yep. If you're wearing a camo skin, then he's always
We'll just call
invisible.
that default.
Overwatch 2, you can get in and out of the fight without even uninvising.
Let's call it speed. So, ideally, we want to save these mobility tools to get out. The one caveat is this amp, because it's not just a mobility tool for Lucio, it's a mobility tool for everyone. So what our tanks can do is they can jump or booster in, and then we can speed amp them out. Or we can speed amp everyone in, and then everyone can use their cooldowns to get out. We don't want Moira to fade. That's like the one exception.
Right.
So what's like the difference? What's the difference in using a cooldown engage versus a speed amp engage? When we do a speed amp engage, it's when we want the full team to really hard chase down an enemy. And then if we get it, great, we're in there. And if someone like individually needs to get out, they can. We want to use a cooldown engage, and that's strictly with these two. It's that we need to take space quickly, so then that our like Reaper and our Lucio can follow them in. It's going to depend on the situation, and it's like you almost have to like try it out and figure what feels right against certain compositions. So like, if we're playing into a Brig, and our monkey jumps in, there's a chance he gets blown up. So maybe we want to speed amp engage instead.
Right.
Or like if the enemy team has a Lucio of their own, and we speed amp engage, maybe they speed amp and run away from us. So that might be a situation where we want to cooldown engage. It depends on like what the enemy team has, and we'll figure it out as we go.
Right.
But that's what I want you guys to take from this. It's that we engage, let's say with our monkey jump. He's going to drop this bubble. We're going to stay on speed, and we're going to follow him. And we're going to meet in the middle, like here. You see he's bubbling off the Winston. You still have the Lucio looking at the Tracer. And then you might have our Sombra or Echo looking at another flanker. It totally depends on the situation what they have, but just as an example. We understand who is marking who. Our Winston's going to jump and we're going to follow, but we're saving speed amp in case we need to get out. And I can send all of this to you and you can read all of these on like specifically what cooldowns you should be using. But
Right.
this is kind of like the flow. We re-engage, drop our bubble, and we kill someone, and then we can kind of decide to keep going or we get out. So this example would be if we decide to like commit to the hard engage. And like this is scenario one because like, well, what if they use cooldowns defensively, right? What if they use Zarya bubble to save the Winston and then the Winston drops his own bubble and like the Ana uses a nade, right? They're using those cooldowns not so that they can reaggress onto us, but just to try to keep everyone together. 6-man is a great comp for taking advantage of when a team plays defensively because they just keep going. We don't necessarily need to use cooldowns if the enemy team does. Like if the Ana nades their Winston, she can give him more healing, right? But if we have Reaper, he just chunks right through it. So that might be a situation where we keep going. If there's something like a flank, we're still looking at those flankers. Or if there's something like the flankers have to rejoin the team, then we might engage harder. I'm going to go over this stuff with you, but just as like a taste. The core tenets for like a lot of this are rationing our cooldowns. So that might be speed amp, that might be Moira Orb, Moira Fade, Bubble, stuff like that. Playing together. And in order to play together, we have to know what that sounds like. So we need to get on the same page, not just with this comp, with any comp, with, okay, what are going to be our trigger words? What are going to be the things that dictate our actions? No DM is a really good one. I'm looking for a hack on the hog. The enemy team wasted cooldowns. Something for us to understand how we're going to play so that we're not just kind of like chuck shit at the wall in the middle of the fight. And the third one is knowing when to get out. If we have resources like Lucio Speed Boost, we want to know when we can abandon the plan, and we just want to hard disengage so that we can then re-engage later. We don't need to take losing fights. So when we're on second point Hollywood, and we try to fight into that like high noon ant matrix, we don't need to take the fight. We have mobility cooldowns. We've got Lucio Speed Amp. We've got the high ground so we can just drop off and use gravity. If we don't want to take a fight, we don't have to. I'm still working on this. This is a little bit rough, but I just want to give you a taste of like, if you want to know what your individual job is and like a step-by-step process of like, okay, we need to play this corner and then we need to walk forward, and I, as like the Moira, should be holding orb, and then if I like need to use it to keep the team like healthy, I gotta tell them. That's what I'm working on.
Alright.
And if you have like specific questions or like scenarios or like, well, what should I have done here? How should my microplay really factor into like what we're trying to do? Let me know. We can talk about it. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.